In 1893, the Columbian Expedition opened in Chicago. The expedition is otherwise known as the famous Chicago World's Fair. The fair lured many tourists to Chicago and influenced America for the greater good. The economy and trade had never been better. However, many people were still struggling with financial problems. One of these people was named Herman Mudgett. Herman Mudgett is more commonly known by his alias H. Holmes. Today, Holmes is known as the first documented serial killer in America. By the time Holmes was caught, he was linked to 27 deaths, and he was suspected of killing many more. The security in Chicago drastically changed. People started to take on new responsibilities to guarantee their own safety. After the serial killer H. Holmes had donated the bodies of his victims to unsuspecting medical schools, the public found out, and the way medical schools got their cadavers was changed. Security levels in Chicago drastically changed. Overall, Holmes' actions greatly impacted society and influenced the rights and responsibilities of the United States citizens.
He killed men, women, and children, and it was all money motivated. He started when he was in college with life insurance scams. So what he would do is he'd have a college buddy. He'd tell the buddy, you take out a life insurance plan on yourself. I'll get a corpse from the morgue. We'll disfigure it. I'll come in and say that to you. You go into hiding, and guess what? We split the money on the life insurance policy. That's where he started these schemes when he was in medical school at University of Michigan. Highly intelligent. He was really an evil genius.
Holmes attended the University of Michigan Medical School in 1884. He became fascinated by the cadavers and eventually became obsessed with death. In 1887, Holmes purchased a pharmacy and turned it into the Chicago World's Fair Hotel. He used the hotel to lure in tourists from the fair. However, this was not a regular hotel. The hotel became known as the Murder Castle and was where Holmes killed his victims.
H. Holmes laid the foundation for every other serial killer after him. We're talking about, there may have been some other serial killers prior to H. Holmes, but there was no other documented serial killer that had a court trial and, all this evidence as H. Holmes had. Here's how what I tell people. Okay, what other serial killer in history has designed and built a big building specifically to dispose of human bodies? None. No one compares to H. Holmes.
Holmes killed his victims by designing different rooms in the hotel that killed people in different ways. He had a staircase that led to nowhere where he would trap them. He would lock them in airtight rooms and release poisonous gases. He created a maze where people would get lost and eventually end up trapped. He then had a chute from the second and third floor of the building where he would drop their bodies into the basement. In the basement, he would strip their bodies of flesh and turn them into skeletons. Holmes then sold these skeletons to medical schools such as Heinemann Medical College and LaSalle Medical School. Holmes' killings changed the way that all medical schools received their skeletons and cadavers.
So you see how it was this constant turnover, and it's interesting how Holmes most likely ushered in this society of America, being a greedy, money-hungry country where we have to acquire, we have to have more, we have to be successful, we have to have big mansions. And Holmes was kind of like the early epitome and example of what we have now, which is excess.
In 1893, the World's Fair made America famous. Crowds of people rushed in from all over the world. America was making huge advances. The fair brought electricity, rapid industrial growth, immigration, and fine arts. America was now being advertised as better than ever. However, social class tension was also higher than ever. The upper class was now made up of those who were rich or successful. The upper class looked down upon those of the lower class. Holmes was simply trying to build his way to the top. Holmes had 3 wives, none of which knew of each other, or what their husband truly did for a living. He also had mistresses. However, unlike his wives, if his mistresses got too close, he would kill them and take their money. Holmes used his family as a cover. He had a wife and a kid and a medical degree, and this made him higher in society, and gave him the facade he needed to get away with the murders.
Why did he have this wife and child set up, and why didn't he kill his wives? Think about it. Why didn't he kill his wives? He knew that when he was eventually caught, if he was caught, he needed somebody to say something good about him. Now, if this wife he has set up in a nice house with her child and well met and gives her money and gives her whatever she wants, would she say something bad about him? When they finally caught him, they interviewed her, and you know what she said? He's never harmed me or my child. I don't know what happens at that building.
When Holmes crossed paths with Marion Hedgepeth, that's when the downward spiral of Holmes' capture started. Holmes told Hedgepeth of his insurance fraud plan with Ben Peitzel. When the plan was put into action, Hedgepeth offered the police Holmes's plan for a reward. Once Holmes realized he had been caught, he killed Peitzel and his 3 children. He was then caught by the Pinkerton Detective Agency and charged with murder and was hanged.
And what's interesting is the earlier serial killers got away with it for much longer because you didn't have DNA typing. You didn't even have fingerprinting at Holmes's time period. It was in its infancy. It was used in France, but those things didn't even arrive here until the early 1900s. So, again, he was so intelligent because he knew how to use those limitations of the time period. And one of those limitations was the fact that police agencies didn't communicate from state to state. So, again, you talk about progress and how it changed things in society. The fact that now Holmes's case may have caused police agencies to communicate between state lines. Holmes would use that to advantage. He traveled throughout the Midwest, even to Toronto, and every time he would go somewhere else, he would change his name. Well, you don't have a social security number, you don't have a driver's license. I am who I am.
The Pinkerton Detective Agency was one of the first in America. Assigned to Holmes's case, they worked to try to find evidence against Holmes's killings. Holmes sent the police on a wild goose chase to find the evidence. However, the Pinkerton Detective Agency worked with the state police and used previously found evidence to track the location of the evidence. This shows how the detective and police agencies advanced beyond their usual boundaries to close this case.
I believe Holmes was definitely a motivation for advancements in law enforcement, advancements in forensics. There were many things that I believe he affected at that time period that caused these agencies and institutions to say, we have to take a deeper look at what we're doing because obviously it isn't effective. Why did he get away with this for so long? And I think he definitely, was a motivation for change in this country.